Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar on the topic being Stories from the Road, Architecting for Adaptability and Agility. My name is Dan Hebda, and with me today is Gordon Cooper, Nick Hatfield. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Megha, been around for nearly 20 years now, and would like to introduce Gordon. Gordon, could you say hello?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Gordon Cooper here. I'm the Director of North America Success and Professional Services. I've been with Megha about 2 years now and have been doing enterprise architecture and governance, risk, and compliance for almost 30 years.
Great, Nick.
Yep, I'm Nick Hatfield, pre-sales engineer here at Megha North America, and I will be demonstrating the tool for you today.
Excellent. So a little background on today's webinar. Recently, I was discussing with Gordon, who manages both customer success and services for Megha, some of the observations he had as he's working with customers around the country. And we thought it would make sense to organize this into a webinar to discuss some of the stories from the road, some of the actual observations that Gordon has had, and some of the trends that he's seeing in successful architecture practices. So among them, we will speak to aspects of creating emergent designs, identifying disruptive trends, building a target operating model, modeling business capabilities, and designing innovative solutions, but we'll do it through the lens of Gordon's interactions with some of our customers. Before we get started, a little bit about Megha. We have been around for quite a while. So founded in 1991, recognized as an EA leader in both the analysts, so Forrester and Gartner. In Gartner for more than 11 years in a row. We've been a leader in the EA Magic Quadrant, and we have been given the distinction of a customer's choice for 2020. With that being said, let's move into the core of the webinar with maybe one detail first, how enterprise architecture can help in a crisis. So for those of you listening, we do appreciate your attendance today. We know it is a difficult time with COVID and the impact that it's having around the globe. And we would like to raise awareness that you can leverage the architecture practice to assist in this time. We do have a separate webinar on that topic, but very quickly, one of the ways in which you can efficiently utilize architecture for this is to establish a capability model for you to identify the critical capabilities for survival and thriving in this environment. Assess the needs, so capabilities don't need to function at the same level that they do, let's say, during a normal time when you're in crisis, and so determine what that level of performance should be. Then you want to prepare and look at the cost efficiency and tech stability of those particular capabilities, ensure that they're up and running in a way that they need to, and then utilize this time to reimagine the business. Look for opportunities that you might have new business models, new channels, new delivery methods, new services that can be used to increase the prospective growth and market for your business in these times. For more information, don't hesitate to reach out and talk to us. So we've put our contact information at the end of the webinar. With all that, let's start on the first trend. And so trend one, architects are helping to shape strategy. Okay, Gordon, could you tell us a little bit first about what did you mean by this when you say architects are helping to shape strategy?
Well, what that means is that what we're seeing in the marketplace with a lot of companies now is that enterprise architecture is no longer relegated to IT. So even though we know that's where it grew up, that's where it originated, in the past, enterprise architecture has always been more about IT planning and IT strategy. Now they're really turning more to focus on the business, and there's a few reasons for this. One of which is they have to become relevant to the business, or they always run the risk of losing funding. The other part of that is the business is now starting to understand with some of the new emerging practices in enterprise architecture that real value can be added to business decisions.
So can you give me a little context on where this is being driven from? Is it that the business is starting to see the potential or the need for information that the architects possess? Are the architects themselves raising their visibility and awareness within business, kind of knocking on doors, the traditional sell the value of EA approach? Or is it some combination of the two that's allowing this evolution of architecture to be more business oriented?
Well, it started as enterprise architects knocking on doors. and saying, here's what we have to offer you. Once people started getting getting it and understanding now that if they contribute to this repository of information that EAs collect and then associate and connect and produce, they're starting to understand that enterprise architecture is not just an IT function. Yes, it is about technology because technology drives most everything that happens in companies. But for strategic planning, it is not just the technological aspects. It's also what is it that you're able to do? What do you want to be able to do? And how do you do it? And knowing these things and having the enterprise architects tell you what your current capabilities are, how effectively these capabilities are running, and what you need to have in place in order to maximize these capabilities or develop new ones has become really important, and EA has taken on that role.
So for the architects listening who might not yet be at the level of full business inclusion or cooperation, what would you say would be some of the approaches and or deliverables that they may utilize to build that bridge to the business to get their architecture practice to the level that you're seeing in this trend that's helping some of the more mature organizations succeed?
Well, as we've got the bullets on the slide, there are two primary ones that I'm seeing out in the industry. The first one, of course, is one of the most popular and being implemented more and more places, and that's capability-based planning. So basically what they're doing is they're getting the capability map. They're modeling the capabilities, and then they're using those capabilities and the assessment of those capabilities to determine what the company could do better or if they need to expand themselves, or expand their capabilities. They're doing this in such a way that they are able to provide all the technologies that are necessary to make this happen, but at the same time, they're also bringing in processes, they're bringing in value streams, they're bringing in all the components of architecture. And they're able to take it from ideation and conceptualization all the way down to the actual architecture of the solution that's being planned to fill this gap.
Excellent. Let's move on to the second trend. So we see a shift in the EA organization. Same as the last trend, can you start, Gordon, with an overview? What do you mean by this? Just give an explanation to our audience.
Well, we've all been doing this long enough to have seen the cycles of enterprise architecture. And so what started, and I've lived through many of these cycles in some places at the same company. So you start with a centralized EA. The centralized EA is building their standards and doing their thing, and then all of a sudden the decision is made, we're going to distribute the central EA function to the business lines. Everybody's going to have their own EA. Then it cycles back, and then it cycles back out. So that was the natural cycle of events. But what we're seeing now that people are starting to catch on that EA actually is a valuable function to the organization is they're starting to see that a small central EA function is good for the creation of the guardrails and the standards and the central EA processes and functions. But they're distributing enterprise architects out into the business lines, or in one of our customers, they actually have enterprise architects assigned to product lines, or they call them tribes, so that these individuals are there to help guide the development of solutions to make sure that they do fit in with the enterprise vision, that they are snapped into the technologies. So that is the hybrid organization that we talk about that we're seeing evolve right now.
So that's interesting. It reminds me of a presentation I had seen a number of years ago where the presenter used the analogy of murmuration and moving some level of control and decision making kind of out to the edges. One of the questions that always comes up in that context is, how do you keep the synergy and the synchronization between that hybrid organization, that central EA function, and the architects that are participating in the teams or tribes?
Well, the primary way of doing this is having a central repository. And by doing that, all information is stored in a central place. You're using or reusing concepts that are agreed upon by all of the participants. So you're not walking all over each other. You're reusing the same concepts, but you're able to build and contribute to the repository to build out the enterprise. one of the funniest things that you run across, it's not really funny, but you run across these things where you've got a small central EA team who's trying to model the entirety of the enterprise. And by the time they get going, everybody's lost interest, or they get defunded and they maybe get a portion of it. But with this new hybrid type organization and a central repository, what you're able to do is crowdsource this information. So you're basically getting a constant flow of valuable information to populate the repository and get the light shined on what the enterprise really looks like.
So let me touch on then one of the subtopics related to what you described. As organizations approach enterprise architecture and at the same time they're trying to move in a more agile manner, one of the common questions comes up about how do you get architecture to not be in the way of the agility and speed that the organization's aspiring toward. The hybrid organization sounds like it may be a method that can assist, but could you give a little bit more light on how it works in a way to enable the agility and speed as opposed to get in the way of it?
Sure. In fact, I can give you kind of an example, and it goes back to one of the bullet points on the previous slide about emerging technology and innovation. So one of the practices that we're seeing enterprise architects, the central EA group, start to focus more and more on, and it helps by having this capability assessment. They're actually going out and identifying new technologies or emerging technologies that may be able to help the company in their development of a new capability or transform an old one. Well, how this really helps is that they not only identify the technology, but they build a reference architecture for it. So reference models and reference architectures for solution architects to use. So now you've got solution architects working in these programs who have constant communication with an embedded enterprise architect who is using reference architectures devised and put into the repository by a central EA function. So now you've got constant communication between what's emerging, what the technological vision for the company is, and turning that into an actionable solution that's being deployed. That's how this communication, or to your point, scale-free correlation actually happens. People have access to each other in a real-time conversation, as opposed to having to submit requests for, we would like to introduce this new technology. It takes a month to go through the process. That's different now.
So it sounds like there's a move away from the exclusive focus of policing standards and being seen as the organization that says no, to more of an enablement function to helping the architectures and especially these agile project teams move forward. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. The new look on enterprise architecture is to move, and they never wanted this title of the organization that says no. It was just unfortunate that it got thrust upon them. But what they've done is that they've actually started developing ways to get away from that stigma by saying, we're not saying no, we're saying, hey, look at this cool new thing and see how you can deploy it. And that's how the stigma has been removed.
Excellent. So that touches on the trend 3. And one of the topics that we've seen in the marketplace is the notion of business outcome driven architecture. And in your third trend, you've defined that architects are architecting the business. So same as the previous 2 trends, let's start with an overview of what did you mean by that?
Well, it's a funny kind of play on words, because you've got business architecture, and business architects are always talking about how capabilities and value streams and products and organizations and all these different components. So the business architects are really doing a great job in collecting these components, and they're bringing them into this central repository. But now what you need to do is get people to start using this information. And the way you do it is you build the architecture of the company. Now, one of the things that I've seen, and it's a great example of this exact thing, we've got a business architects, information architects, and technical architects all working together to build a target operating model. Now, this target operating model is it's a reference model. And so they're building all the processes that are used by this reference model. They're all the applications, the technologies, everything that it would take to take this business and create a new business somewhere else. or to create a new line of business. They've got all the components, and you can identify shared services and the requirements for getting it started. That's how you're helping to architect the business now. You're actually looking at it from a business perspective and not from an IT perspective.
So similar to the first trend and a question I had there is I'm imagining some of the architects listening maybe aren't yet at the level of architecting the business. Maybe to the first trend, they aren't yet recognized by the business as valuable. We've already addressed in trend one how you can get that visibility and awareness to the value of the offering. But let's talk a little bit of how do we start transitioning an EA practice to really architect the business. So one, I think I heard you say, but let me get clarity from you. Business architecture is a requirement. And then two, if you can elaborate on what's kind of the next step, that once that business architecture practice is up and running, how do I take it further to really architect the business?
Well, to answer your question, business architecture is a requirement. And for a very long time, business architecture was usually a function of a different organization and not necessarily in the enterprise architecture organization. Now it's moving that direction. I'm seeing more and more places where business architects are now part of the EA organization, which means that now enterprise architects are starting to become more and more like technical businessmen. So they understand the business, they understand what you're trying to do as a business, because the main thing that businesses are looking for now, and the people who are assigning the funding, is what have you done for me, or what can you do for me? And if you can't answer that question, if you can't help them understand what the impact of for instance, if you can't help them with their business continuity plans, if you can't tell them that their processes and their applications, everything that's associated to this particular so-called critical process is also labeled as critical and has the same RTOs and RPOs that are required to support the SLAs, then you're not really doing your job, because enterprise architecture is comprehensive, it's holistic. And the sooner that people start making that transition, the sooner the business is going to understand the overarching value of enterprise architecture and not seeing it as a specific IT function.
So let's expand on that a little bit, because I think you're touching on a key point here. I could imagine that some business architects in the audience maybe cringe a little if you say business architecture moves under EA, if they imagine EA as the traditional IT focused enterprise architecture. But if we imagine enterprise architecture as the more business inclusive and business oriented architecture, then BA should be right at home. How can we help those listening today move in that direction? What are some of the value proposition and or deliverables that they might need? What are some of the conversations or touch points to build on some that you mentioned, like business continuity planning? But let's give a little bit more direction and advice based on some of the observations you have.
Sure, and I'll equate that to that same comment to a person in risk management who is saying risk management is not part of the enterprise architecture. It absolutely is. Risks are associated at the component level, at the process level. It's aggregated up into the organization. So to say that business architecture is not part of enterprise architecture means that you have narrowed your view. Now, to your second point about the deliverables and what you can do to start making this more practical is, of course, you have to start with your basic components. As a business architect, I'm not telling you anything new. You got to have your capability maps. You got to model your value streams. You need to identify what your product set is. You need to look at your organization, how it's laid out. These are the components, but the real value is going to come as you're integrating these components with all of the other components of the enterprise. So for instance, if you've got a business capability, you need to be able to understand what does it take from a technology perspective to perform or to deliver that capability. You need to know who needs to be involved. So organizationally, you need to be able to combine those aspects together. It's all about relatability. And some of the key deliverables here are these associations so that you get a comprehensive picture. And I always go back to this example. If I need to produce a product, I need to know exactly what it takes to produce that product. Because if I need to make a change or develop a new product, what is it that I'm going to have to acquire, purchase, or change? Without enterprise architecture telling you these associations, you'll never get a full or comprehensive picture.
Excellent. I think with there, we'll move on to a quick product demonstration. So Nick, if you don't mind, walk us through, maybe show us a few examples to illustrate some of what Gordon spoke to, and I'll be back in just a few minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Gordon. So I'm just going to share my screen here. You should see a login screen for Megha HopeX. And that's exactly what we're going to do, Dan. We're thinking about how can the architect the business. So for me, and focusing on Megha HopeX here, it starts with evaluating a customer journey. So we want to get some clues, some kind of insights about how our customers are interacting with our company and how they feel about their interactions with us. And are there any moments where maybe we could turn them around or provide more value or a better solution for the problems that they might have? So what I just pulled up here is a customer journey map. You can see we've got a couple of different swim lanes, some information. What this is based on is a returning customer to an online shopping platform. So we can see the typical steps of searching for a product. There's some categories to filter through and compare. There's an opportunity to do research in this swim lane. This shows that some things in that customer journey are outside of your control, which could lead to a positive or a negative result. Maybe they confirm the quality of your brand and they decide they do want to do business with you. Then you can follow our lines here in our swim lanes and see that this could end up in a order review and then ultimately completing an order. The main point of this is that as an architect, you can visualize this customer journey, but then you can also attach business processes or application systems to a specific point of interaction, and then really understand what this relationship looks like, what the dependencies are, what the impact is. So we have an application and a specific IT service that are used in this specific step of the search and compare. So if we think that our customer isn't getting the best experience when they're comparing, maybe there's something that we can do to make that experience a little bit better. So we have those recommendations as well as the systems used. So to accentuate what Dan and Gordon have been discussing, you can take this information and you can place it on a capability heat map. So when you're looking for opportunities to improve or innovate your business, you can take this capability-based view and then you can support this information with additional filters. So what we have at the top here are several of our core business capabilities. So this could be a business functionality, just something that the business does, a key important part of the system. We have assessments, business value, capability efficiency, the effectiveness, and financial impact. You can gain these assessments through crowdsourcing. So you're asking the experts that know these capabilities, these business areas better than anybody else. So then the main goal here is to look at our capabilities and look for opportunities to reimagine or improve. On this first layer here, we have our core capabilities. We're seeing the aggregates of the business value. So right now, we're really just looking at the business value of our capabilities. We have the aggregate in yellow, and then we can see that we have some that are doing pretty well, as notified with the green. So there's a significant impact to our business value. I've also got some applications here with additional filters for technical efficiency and functional support. So not only can you look through the lens of improving a capability, but you can also look at applications as well. And we can continue to drill down. So this red business value quality capability looks like there's some opportunity to make some improvements when we look at the functional support and technical efficiency of these applications. We can see there's an opportunity here because we have an application that's coded pretty well, that doesn't have a lot of functionality, maybe there's some additional functionalities that we can get out of it. So when we look at that customer journey and then we start thinking in terms of our business capabilities, it really gives us a better opportunity to re-architect the business in a way that makes more sense. Once you've done this, though, it's very important to have a plan, to have some kind of roadmap in place. So that's exactly what I will present to you here. We have a period of transformation for our company. This revolves around improving the customer-facing website. We need to give our customers a better opportunity to find the products that they're looking for, to filter, to search. So what we've done here is within our transformation period, we've described our enterprise goals. That's our blue symbol here. Again, these revolve around improving our customer base online. And then we have enterprise objectives as well, indicated by the yellow symbol. And then we break this down into different stages. So we have the objectives that we're working to complete today in our current state as is. We have the objectives that we plan to complete in the future for our business transformation stage. And then of course, in order to make a business transformation possible, there has to be an IT transformation as well, which we have listed out in this stage. So currently we're looking to improve the quality of service of business critical applications and lower IT costs. Fantastic, that's what we're doing today to achieve our enterprise goals. In our business transformation stage, in order to improve the websites, broaden that customer base, we know for sure we need to improve invoicing efficiency in order to keep up with what we're planning on is more new business and more repeat business. We're going to need to have this new capability accounting V2 to keep up with all of that change. And then finally, in our 2B IT transformation stage, we have some required functionalities to actually make all of this happen. So instead of IT being in some kind of distant silo, they can actually visualize what the business needs to accomplish, understand why they want to accomplish that and when, but then also take that language and put it into IT terms that make sense. So we have required functionalities. In order for the business to achieve their objectives and the enterprise goals, we're going to need these additional functionalities. Billing must be available on the mobile device. Customers must be able to edit the prices list, as well as the ability to send bills to the customers through this platform. So we've looked at 3 views here, taking in the customer journey, looking for opportunities to improve our business capabilities, and then also placing them into a roadmap. So this is really revolved around how to reimagine our business, how to really move it forward. But then also, Dan and Gordon, you spoke about resiliency of the business. So we, of course, provide several different views on a dashboard. These are all completely configurable. And a high-level view as far as answering questions about the total cost of ownership of business lines. So I have 2 different business lines here on my dashboard. I can look at the application total cost of ownership broken down by specific license. In this capability dendrogram, I can break down my business capabilities and see what systems they're actually affecting, as well as view my vendor dependency. So if there's some kind of outage with a Microsoft technology, I can quickly query a list of applications that are using that supported technology. Dan, I am going to send it back to you unless we have any questions.
I think that's great. If you could send it back to the conclusion slide, I'll maybe connect a few dots and wrap up. So the presentation today was focused on adaptability and agility as delivered through some observational trends that Gordon Cooper, our Customer Success and Services Director, is directly participating and observing around the country. And just to maybe highlight the connectedness between that adaptability notion and agility, the adaptability really comes from a business focus. From a supportive of the EA practice or a tooling perspective, we see a lot of people using business capabilities and business architectural concepts to help drive visibility to enable that adaptability. When it comes to the greater agility in terms of enterprise architecture, it's in the new hybrid EA organization, the way that we're seeing that centralized function versus architects within the teams coordinate and cooperate. And the way that that's coming to value or delivering real results is with an outcome-driven approach. And so here, to wrap up, there is a change that's occurring. For some organizations, it's already occurred. For others, it's about to begin, that we're moving away from what we're calling traditional EA. We want to get out of the notion of being seen as IT only, as being slow, as being seen as the organization that says no, and really move into an approach that focuses on achieving genuine outcomes and primarily business outcomes, really illustrating how the architecture is going to affect the business and deliver on new abilities. And that can be new levels of an existing ability or a new ability altogether, so that there can be significant value that's recognized not only by the architects themselves, but by the individuals within the organization. So thank you everyone for attending today. Just one quick reminder that if you do have any questions, feel free to send us an email. And in particular, if there are those of you who maybe are having a challenging time due to all that's going on in the world right now, and you want to ask some question or advice on using architecture to support your organization during this crisis, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be happy to help. And with that, a final thank you. Gordon, thank you. Nick, thank you. And the audience, thank you very much.
Thank you.